Hi everyone. So this week's task is the archery game in Scratch, and your objectives this week are really to build on your confidence in using the different features in Scratch, particularly broadcasts and random functionality, as well as developing your problem solving skills and kind of developing your skill set for coming up with your own game, hopefully at the end of this unit of work. And this one's all about using the mouse to control different sprites. So I'm going to go ahead and follow the instructions that are on the Firefly page. So I'm going to start off with a completely blank file. So I'm going to click Create. If you get this message, just click to allow to use Flash. Hopefully that loads. And if not, I will need to abandon it for Chrome. There we go. So, first things first, I am going to get rid of the cat by clicking on it with the scissors to delete that sprite. You can see from the first task that we basically want to create a simple target as a sprite. But what I'm going to do first of all is give my project a name. Now you can see here that it says saved, but if you want to save yours, you should do it often. You can see file save now, but just keep your eye on this saved here. It should save automatically. So let's get started. Let's paint a new sprite, but before we do anything, I'm going to rename it, which we should do to a sensible name like we should do with all of our sprites. And then I'm just going to paint a simple target, which later you can come back and change. Now if you hold shift down when you're drawing these circles, what it does is it draws a perfect circle for you. So I'm not going to worry too much about how perfect this is at the moment. I just want it to be functional. And I'm going to come back later and perfect it once I get the rest of my features added. So I'm just going to draw 3 circles, try and position them roughly in the centre again. If it's not perfectly centred, I will fix it later. So I want 3 circles on there, each getting slightly smaller each time, holding shift down to make sure they're perfect circles. And that's us set up. Now there's other tools in here. You could come back later and import a target image from Google if you wanted, which is something you can definitely try. But what we've got to do is make sure that the centre of alignment is dead on the centre of our target. So if you just click it once, that's perfect. Even when I move the mouse, it moves around, but as long as I don't click, that isn't changed. So make sure you click once on the centre of the target. Our next steps build on some of the activities we did in previous years using the random functionality to get our target to move randomly across the screen and wait a random amount of time too. But before we do that, I'm just going to use the shrink tool to shrink my target a bit, otherwise it becomes too easy. So how do we get that to happen? Well, we want all our code to happen when we click on start. And like the majority of things in games, we need a loop that repeats continuously. And we want our sprite to move to a specific location, and then we also want it to wait a certain amount of time. Now there's absolutely no random functionality in here whatsoever. But in our operators, we have a random functionality. So if we grab a pick random 1 to 10, now I don't want 10 seconds. If I use 3 seconds for its delay, we can get it to move faster and slower depending on the time it picks. And if we use 2 more of these for X and Y coordinates and investigate the screen, now you can see the X and Y coordinates here. The screen is approximately minus 240 X to 240, which is in pixels, and then the Y is slightly shorter. It goes from minus 180 to 180. And now when we press the green flag, you can see that it pauses before jumping over to other areas on the screen, which is exactly what I wanted to achieve. So that's part one. Now we want to create the ability to be able to shoot at that target. So we've got a couple of objectives here that we need to complete. So the first thing we're going to do is have a crosshair that follows the mouse. We're going to have it fire when we press the space button, and we need to check that when you do that, if it's touching the green colour. And we're going to keep track of how many shots are fired, the score as well eventually, and we're going to stop the user just holding down spacebar for the full time. So to do this, we're first off going to create a new sprite, which is going to make a black circle and fill it in, and I'm going to make it pretty small. We're eventually going to erase it anyways, or not erase it, we're going to hide it. So if we make it nice and small, and again use the center alignment to make sure we get it as close to the center as possible. So I'm just going to click once in the middle, and that's the setup created there. So we'll shrunk it down, and we're going to rename it as well, which we should have done, and we'll just call this target, sorry, not target, crosshair. And you'll eventually see how this works when we finish it off. So we need it to track the mouse constantly. So again, set up for most things in our games, forever loop, and we can use motion, and we can get it to go to the mouse pointer continuously. Now, if you look at my screen when I'm moving around, that little target tracks exactly where the mouse is. We could use the arrow keys, but obviously that's not very good. Next, we are going to create a variable rather, that keeps track of how many shots are fired by the player. So I've created a variable called shots fired. It's a very good habit that at the start of the game you initialize all of your variables to what they have to be. So we need to create a shots fired, and maybe one called points or score, so I've forgotten to do that. So make another one called score. Now when that game begins, both of these need to be set to 0, so it's reset for the user. Now we have a little bit of complex code coming up to work out if the user has managed to hit the target or not. So again, on the crosshair, we're going to set up things for games. So we need a control forever loop. Now what we want to do is check if the user is pressing the spacebar. So from our sensing, hopefully we can remember from the last task that we did, we should have these different sensing options. So if the key space is pressed, now we could have an AND here, but it's the same thing, but slightly different if we have another if inside this. And if we're touching the colour red, so again we're in sensing, touching colour. Now I'm going to stop this running to this next part. So I click on the colour, then we get the little mouse pointer hand, and click on the red. So this basically says if you're pressing the spacebar and this sprite is touching red, that means we've fired a shot and we've hit the bullseye. Now, in that case, I want to give the player 10 points. So I would go to data, drag in a change score by 1, and I'm going to alter this to 10 points. Now look very carefully at where that is. It's on the inside. Lots of people make the error of not putting it in the correct place. It's got to be inside the inner if. Now at the moment, it doesn't increase shots fired, but shots fired increases every time the user presses the spacebar. So we grab another change the variable to shots fired, and change it by 1, which goes out every time the user presses the spacebar. And so that it doesn't just fly up when you press spacebar like this. I'm holding the spacebar, you can see just how very quickly it goes up. And what you'll see on the screen is very quickly amassing lots of points. If we use a weight and use a figure like 0.1 seconds, it helps slightly so that the user can't just keep holding it down. They can hold it down to a certain extent, and we can experiment with that to see what the best number is. So I've got 0.3 there at the moment. You can see that I can still hold down spacebar, but I just can't shoot rapidly. Now, it could be another feature that you go and add in to allow the user to add in extra points and scores. Now, that's only the red target being hit. Obviously, there'll be similar code for blue and green, which you're not going to get any help with. You'll see from the instructions that there's a part 3, statistics and scoring, that we want to know the score. So we get 10 points for red, which we've completed. We should be getting 3 points for blue and 1 point for green. Shots fired increases every time the user clicks, so that's working. We want another variable to keep track of hits, which increases every time there's a hit on that board somewhere. Misses should be if there's no contact made with the target, I guess, and also accuracy variable that will work out a percentage of successful hits, and that can be updated every time the user hits spacebar. So that's the expert area, and you'll also see that there's some challenges on there to add in extra features. So hopefully this introduction helps you to get the basic part completed, and then we'd like to see lots of people getting onto the more challenging parts.